Oh my goodness, Youest community, my soul family. What a gift and honor today to be back with Gregg Braden, literally one of my favorite people on the planet. He may not know this. I look at him as a mentor and an inspiring role model. And we're going to just dive right in. Gregg, thank you so much for coming back to the show.
Julie, it's an honor to be with you. I'm thrilled, and I don't know why we don't do this more often. I am coming to you today from a studio just outside of Santa Fe. We're recording episodes for ancient wisdom, ancient civilization. That's the background. I think it's the perfect setting for the conversation that you and I are going to have today.
It's so perfect. And for those who are going to watch this on YouTube, you got to see it's the coolest background. I was like, is that real? And it is real.
It's all real.
It's real.
It's not a virtual background. See, I
Right.
can.
You can touch the grass. I love it. Well, why don't we just start, right? One of the questions I was asking you as we were just connecting, and anytime you want to come, Gregg, you have an open invitation anytime, literally. I know everyone, the first interview wrote to me like, oh my goodness. I mean, just flowing, glowing remarks. So we're going to go dive right in because right now, obviously, we're a little farther into this pandemic and there's such, I think there's anxiety and fear and question, like, how do I care for myself right now in the best way possible? How do I honor myself and take care of myself? And are there things that we can do, practices, wisdom? I have a feeling you have a lot to say about this. How can we do that? What are some ideas?
I thank you. It's a question that's up for everybody right now, and
Yeah.
I'm going to begin at a very high level with context, and then
Yeah.
we'll go down into specifics. Are you okay if we do it that way?
Oh my gosh, please,
Because
please.
I want to be, a lot of
Yeah.
times I'm seeing in the interviews, people skirt the fundamental issues
Yeah.
for a lot of reasons. And I think it's important to be real
Yeah.
with our audience. So I'll begin. I am a scientist. I'm a degreed earth scientist with a strong background in the life sciences, of math, physics, computer science, as well as archaeology. And I say that because it gives me the skills to stay current with new scientific discoveries that are often published in the very obscure, peer-reviewed journals and things like that. So, and I'm going to talk about some of those. So I want to begin by saying that, and also by saying that we are immersed in a battle. There's a battle playing out in
Mm.
our world, in our lives, right in front of our faces. It's often said, Julie, the best way to hide something is to keep it in plain view. And
Yeah.
and there's a battle, multiple levels of the battle. There's a battle for our thoughts. And I
Mm.
think that's no secret. It's very honest to say that. The media, all media, I have yet to see any objective media anywhere, even sources that used to be. The media is informing us uh, and guiding us to think about ourselves and our world in very specific ways. So there's a battle for our thoughts. There's a battle for our beliefs. It's playing out in our classrooms, in our children's classrooms. For who we are we the product of a random process, or are we the product of some kind of an intelligent intervention in our past? There's a
Mm.
battle for the way we think about the universe. Is the universe random and an accident, lucky physics? Or is the universe ordered? Is it intelligent? Is it conscious? And I'll just tell you right now, the new science is telling us exactly that the universe is conscious, it is ordered, it is intelligent, and we are part of that. Uh, there's a battle playing out for our bodies. Well, we all know that. What does it take to get healthy? What does it take to stay healthy? There's a battle playing out for when it comes to our babies, our children. What do our children need to stay
Yeah.
healthy? And what is required of us to keep our children healthy in society? All of those battles are playing out. For me, Julie, they're static. They're all noise.
Mm.
They're diversions and distractions for an even deeper battle that very, very few people uh, really even want to talk about. And it's a battle for our very humanness.
Yeah.
And that's what's up for us right now. We have been conditioned for over a generation now. We've been told that somehow the human body is flawed in its very existence, that carbon based life in general and the human species specifically, that we are a flawed form of life, that we are essentially powerless and helpless, victims of whatever it is that's happening in the world. And if you're a victim, you need a savior. And we've been taught that technology is our savior, and that we need external technology to be at our best. We need external technology to achieve our greatest potentials, our greatest goals. And I want to be really honest. I mean, I'm an optimist and I'm a realist. And realistically, and a scientist, I look at the technology of the world, and the technology cannot be good, bad, right, or wrong.
Yeah.
We develop the technology, it's how it's applied. And what is happening, part of the battle, is that the technology is evolving so quickly, Julie, it's outpacing the morality of how we embrace it in our lives.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you a perfect example of this. It wasn't that long ago, 2018-ish, when scientists published in these scientific journals that we have the ability to edit the DNA of a fetus inside the womb of a living woman. And just the way you do a word processor. So in a word processor, you can highlight a word or a sentence or a whole paragraph or a whole page. You can delete it. You can cut it and paste it into somewhere else and rearrange it. Well, now there are gene editors that come up on the screen, and rather than paragraphs and sentences, you literally see the DNA that's there in the genes, and you can cut and paste and merge and delete. Now, this could be a godsend if you recognize that the fetus has spina bifida, for example, where the spine is outside the body. Who wants to be born in that way? But it can also be very dangerous because it allows the selection of traits and qualities that are deemed desirable to be put in place before the baby is even born. And the question is, who makes those decisions? Who decides what eye color is desirable, or what hair color, or what IQ, or fast twitch muscles, or slow twitch muscles for athletic performance? It was all theory until 2018. Actually, the technology before that, 2018, was when a Chinese scientist proudly announced, holding in his arms, here are the first gene-edited babies. He had done what was only theoretical. He had actually done it, and the scientific community came down on him like a ton of bricks. And they said, wait a minute, just because we can doesn't mean that we should. And I'm using this as an example.
Yeah. Wow.
That theme is playing out in technology as it comes to our bodies. So there is a movement to replace aspects of the human body with chips, computer chips, with wires, with chemicals, in the belief that we need this to be at our best. Well, here's the problem. When we begin replacing our natural biology with artificial technology, our bodies begin to atrophy. The neurons, if you replace parts of the brain with computer chips, the neurons they're replacing begin to atrophy because they're not used. Use it or lose it. We've all heard this.
Right.
And in one generation, if it's no longer used, in the next generation, the body says, well, this becomes an appendage that we no longer need. And we begin to lose the very essence of what we cherish as a species, as our humanness.
Yeah.
And this is what's up for us right now. So this is the battle that's playing out. Now, the really good news, and I'm going to do this. This is probably the fastest I've ever done this in the interest of time, because the new science is giving us a completely different story.
Okay.
Completely different story. The new science is just for example, the average human, whatever average is, has about 50 trillion or so cells, give or take.
Okay.
Every one of those cells has a little electrical charge of 0.07 volts. And you say, well, that's not very much. And I say, you're right. But now do the math. If you got 50 trillion cells times 0.07 volts, you've got I've done this so many times, 3.5 trillion volts of electrical potential available to you. And that is such a crazy number, just to give our viewers some idea, our listeners,
Yeah.
some idea. you know what the battery in your car looks like, a 12 volt car battery, or they use them on solar panels now, the 12 volt
Yeah.
battery. It takes 3 billion 12 volt batteries to equal the electrical potential in your body. And
Whoa.
it doesn't stop there, because every one of those cells, in addition to that potential, that you can harness that potential and direct it for healing or resilience or longevity or regeneration,
Yeah.
heart rate, variability, all these kinds of things. But in addition to that, every one of those cells, it functions as a transistor, just the way the transistors work in our computers and our phones, massaging energy and information. It acts as a resistor. It acts as a capacitor, storing and releasing information. Every cell in our body releases light, photons, into the world, as well as we receive light, just like plants receive light, and we chemically work with that light in ways that are only scientists are only beginning to understand. Every cell, the good thing about, if there is a good thing about COVID, is we all know what cells look like now. And
Yeah.
the outside of every cell has receptors that are like antenna. Now, we know they can receive chemical signals, but they also receive energetic signals, electromagnetic signals, light signals. And in the cell, the nucleus, the DNA is an antenna. And within that are antenna within antenna. The genes are refined antenna. Every cell functions as a gated circuit. And I could go on and on with this. The idea is that we are conditioned to think of the human body as a powerless, weak system that is vulnerable to the external world. And what we're beginning to see is we literally are a highly advanced, highly sophisticated, soft technology. So when I say that, we're not the old-fashioned computer chips and wires and chemicals. We are beyond that. We are so sophisticated that rather than wires and chips and chemicals, we are neurons and cell membranes, moving fluids and ion potentials across the cell membrane, crystalline bone. And here's where it gets really, really interesting. And this is the good news. We are the only form of life that we know of with the ability to self-regulate all of this biology, to self-regulate this potential. And we do it through breath, focus, through movement, through emotion, breath, focus, emotion, language. And this is the core of our most ancient and cherished spiritual traditions.
Wow.
So our ancestors understood this, but they didn't perhaps know the science. They weren't scientists.
Right.
Science only came along 3,000 years ago. So for 5,000 years, our ancestors have understood these relationships without the science. 300 years ago, science came along and began to rediscover the relationships, but they threw out the 5,000 years of human experience, and now we're up against it. Now we are living a time of extremes, something we've never seen before, and I personally believe that we owe it to ourselves, Julie, to draw upon every iota of knowledge without judging where it comes from. Draw upon the principles that were understood by the shamans in the Yucatan, or by the Bedouin in the deserts of Egypt, or by the monks and the nuns that I've shared time with in Tibet, or Nepal, or India, or the shamans in the curanderos in the Andes of southern Peru, and marry that best science of the modern world to give us the evolutionary edge, so that we don't want to just survive, we want to thrive and transcend what it is that life has brought to our doorstep. And when we begin to think of our bodies in that way, Julie, this is the good news. It changes everything. And when we do it within the context, the broader context that I mentioned earlier, that the universe, it literally is alive. It is conscious. It's not dead. It's not inert. It is connected. It is intelligent. And here's the kicker. The fundamental rule of nature, the fundamental law of nature, is based upon cooperation and what biologists call mutual aid, rather than Darwin's idea of competition and conflict. So when we begin to think of ourselves as soft technology, that we have direct access to through thoughts, feelings, emotions, beliefs, breath, and focus within the context of a universe that likes us.
Mm.
You teach young people. It's a very different way to teach, rather than teaching young people survival of the strongest. Dog eat dog world is what I was taught when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I never believed it, but I was taught that.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we have a generation of young people that begin to work together and live very, very differently. And here's the reason, Julia, and then I'll stop and take a breath here.
Right.
We we live our lives, we are self-referencing beings. So we're conditioned to be self-referencing beings. So our sense of well-being hinges upon what's happening in the world around us. So when the world is safe, kids are good, everybody's healthy, the economy's good, the stock market's good, everybody's got jobs, man, we feel great. But you start to tweak some of those external factors. And if our sense of well-being is dependent upon them, all of a sudden, we are scared.
Yeah.
And in our fear, we begin to live our lives and heal our bodies very, very differently. So the better we know ourselves, this is where we're going, the better we know ourselves, the less we fear change in the world. The better we know ourselves, the less we fear one another. Yeah. And the most important, for me, I think the most important thing of all, the better we know ourselves, the less we fear our own power. And the better equipped we are to deal in a healthy way with whatever life brings to our doorstep. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know we can't control out there. We've got total control over here.
Yeah.
When you begin to really embrace everything that we're talking about right now, it changes everything. So I'll just say, does that make sense? First of all, does it make sense?
Oh my gosh. First of all, I could listen to you for hours. I'm like, keep going. It's really good news. I actually feel like it's like, the CTA, the call to action of what planet Earth is asking for. What you're talking about, this cooperation over versus, over competition really is it makes complete sense. What's coming to mind for those listening are, okay, how, the better, I love what you said, the better we know ourselves, the less fear that we have of others, what are some, I know this is like the question that maybe you could go on for a long time, but to know yourself, and I'm thinking of, connecting to the ancient wisdom of the different traditions you talked about, just to give some ideas where to start. Because I know you have so many. What do you think are some of the ones that that can be used and that are easy to kind of access and utilize to get to really know yourself better?
You mean what practices is that what you're asking about?
Practices, yeah, I think practices and what you've seen just studying the different traditions and communities all over the world. Exactly.
Well, I'm going to answer it in two ways. There's an emerging philosophy in the scientific community that to me is a game changer, and it's deep. So I need permission from your community. Can we go deep for a minute?
Oh, everyone here are empaths, highly sensitive, beautiful souls that are like, yes, I can hear them like, please go deep with us.
All right. So I'm just going to, this is an emerging philosophy. Not every scientist is on board with this, but many are beginning to recognize this. So I'm going to state the principle and then we'll flesh it out. We'll unpack this a little bit. The principle is that consciousness informs itself through its creations. So consciousness teaches itself about itself through the things that it builds and the things that it makes. So what that means is the things that we think often are diversions or entertainment, and they can be.
Yeah.
But they may also be serving a very different purpose. So that means all the books that are written and the art that's created and the sculptures that are created, the movies that look at the themes of the most popular movies. It's surprised, like The Matrix, surprised they didn't think it was going to be that popular. Science fiction movie, and all of a sudden, man, it was like a blockbuster global.
Yeah.
And what did it say to us? The movie, and I'm not saying 100% of everything in The Matrix, but the theme. The theme was that there's a world we can't see. that we participate in that influences a world that we can see. Why is that so powerful to people? I think it's because we know that that is true on some level. That is an example of consciousness calling forth. Consciousness said, we want to remember this. So in the field, this principle is there, and creative people that tap into the field made a movie out of it. Avatar, the movie Avatar, was informing us of how sacred and how powerful and necessary and vital our relationship with the natural world really is. Now, it was done in a really visually very cool way. Inception, the movie Inception, was all about dreams. And in the movie, business transactions happened in the dream state of people that knew how to wake up in their dreams. And then in the waking state, they would go into the boardroom and rubber stamp what already happened in the dreams. And look at young people today, the movies that they're most drawn to, Wonder Woman and the Avengers and Harry Potter and all these, they all are telling us that there is a power that lives within us, or multiple powers that are untapped. And I think we all sense that.
Yeah.
And consciousness is informing us of this. Okay, so if does that make sense so far?
Absolutely. Of course, now I have more questions, but keep going. This is fantastic.
So now take it to the next level. If this is true, then technology has to fall into this category. All of the technology that we're building around us, what if it's telling us something about ourselves? Well, what I can say to you as a scientist is I have yet to see any technology ever in the world around us. And I worked in high tech, man. I was in the defense industry in the Cold War. I worked at SDI, Star Wars Defense Initiative, laser systems, radar systems, navigation systems, and I've seen extremely high and powerful technology, and I have yet to see any, Julie, even in this moment, that does not mimic in some way what we already do in the cells of our body. Through our technology, we're building a world around us to inform us and remind us of what we are in here. And following that principle, what's up for everybody right now? Vaccines.
Yeah.
A vaccine mimics when the old ideas of vaccine, the old ideas of where you introduce a weakened form of a contagion into your body so that your body can build those defenses. That idea mimics what our bodies already do and have done very successful since we appeared on Earth 200,000 years ago. So all of these principles. So when you ask me, and the indigenous people will reflect what I've said to you. When I've met with indigenous elders, and I write about this in some of the books, I met with a Navajo elder in Chaco Canyon in 1990, who said to me that the people of the earth have become lost, and that we so long for the deep connection that we used to have with the earth, with the cosmos, with the spirits, and with ourselves, that we began to build outside of ourselves the mirrors of what we already do to remind ourselves. And what he said, and I think about this a lot, he said, we'll continue to clutter our external world. Our world will be very complex and very cluttered until we remember that everything we're building is us. And then we let that go. So the world looks simpler, but we have become more sophisticated because we have remembered our true power and embraced our true power. So from that perspective, and I am not anti-vax at all, but what I'm saying is it is a technology. Some people may need that technology and other people may not need that technology. I firmly believe that one size never fits all when you're talking about 8 billion people on an entire species on a planet, because we are so diverse and so unique. But what I'm saying is the technology outside of us, we're building to remind us of our own inner power. And I just gave you the soft technology of all 0.07 volts and transistors and resistors and gated circuits. So we are very powerful beings, Julie. And I think this is what is ultimately is what is coming from where we find ourselves. Now, I'll tell you where I think we're going right now.
I would love to hear.
I think we are witnessing, we're in it. And so we have to go through it. There was a time I think we could have circumvented a lot of the suffering, but we as a species, we didn't want to look at what was in front of us. So that time has passed, and now we're in the change. And the only way out of it is to go through it.
Yep.
The question is, do we go through it with a crash landing or do we come out in a soft landing? And I think these understandings help us to mold the future that is possible so we can have a little bit of a softer landing. And I think the way we get to that future is what's happening right now. Two parallel societies are emerging. And it's not like one's on one side of town and the other's on the other side. It's at the family dinner table.
Yeah.
Kids are being led to think one way, and maybe the parents are thinking a different way.
Yeah.
And so, two parallel societies. One society is all in on everything. They're
Right.
in on the technology, they're in on the surveillance in exchange for greater security. They're all in on everything that we're talking about. And the other side, this is interesting, and you may be seeing this. I'm seeing people at the grocery store who are not in the conversation that you and I are in right now. But what they are in is this. They're saying, wait a minute, something doesn't seem right.
Mm-hmm.
Let's slow down. Let's not so fast. Let's go back to basics. And they're looking for more basic ways to access their food, to heal their bodies, to think about politics, to think about religion, to think about race, all the things that are up for us right now. They're saying, let's go back to what's true for us and what we know to be true. So here's what's happening. Two parallel societies. This cannot last long. It's going to happen pretty quick. Something's got to give. And what I think will happen is human nature, we're going to check each other out. And we're going to look at people who are all in on the tech, and we're going to look at the other, and we're going to say, who's happier? Who's healthier?
Yeah.
Whose lives are more fulfilled?
Yeah.
And the answer to that question is going to be like when Harry met Sally. Whoever has it, they're going to say, I want what she's having.
Yeah, I love that scene.
It's a reference to an old movie. If you haven't seen it, check out When Harry Met Sally. And then what will happen, I think this is ultimately, Julie, what will unify us as a society, because we are going to arrive at values
Yeah.
that we share, fundamental values that we share, like the sovereignty of our bodies.
Yeah.
That's a fundamental value. The freedoms that are on the line right now to share and express ourselves without being shamed and without losing friends. Those are fundamental values. And we're going to arrive at fundamental values, fundamental human values, and this will be what unifies us. And we're on a path now. We've got to go through it to get to it. And I think this is what we're going to see. And it can't last years. This is going to happen. I mean, it's not going to last 10 years or 5 years. I mean, this is going to happen pretty quick because it's happening already. And it's being forced. So the pandemic is forcing the conversation to answer the deepest truths of our existence. And I think it's a very exciting time. It can be very frightening if you don't know the things that we're talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm going to invite our viewers, and I run into this. I'm in this with you. We're all in this together.
Yeah.
There's a lot of fear in the world. And the fear, if people don't know how to remedy that fear, it can be experienced as hurt. And there's a lot of hurt in the world. And that hurt often is expressed as hate. And when we see that hate, it's not an excuse for the hate, but it helps us to understand why it's there and maybe how to embrace that hate in a kind and loving way rather than reacting to it. And I think these are all things that are up for us right now. And a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but you got to talk about how can we deal with the issues if we're not honest with the issues or honest about the issues? How can you solve the problem if you're not honest about the problem? And this is what I'm seeing is perhaps the biggest problem. It's the way we think. And so, Julie, what you and I have done in this brief conversation is we've offered our community some opportunities to think differently about themselves and specifically and their relationship to the world in general. And this could be part one. Maybe we could do a part two.
Oh my gosh. I just, what you said, there's a lot of, as you said, I know you're a realist and optimist. It's just the idea of this unifying us for that core value of sovereignty of our body, and thinking back to how you described our body as being these brilliant soft technologies that I'm grateful and lucky because I've gotten to study with you and read your books and follow, learn this. But for those who may not have known that, or even honestly, I did not know, you said it was, I have it right here, the 3.5 trillion volts of electrical. But what? Like, I think it's like this reminder that the way we were originally, the way we were designed and built, the way we are naturally is beyond powerful. And yeah.
Oh, Julie, if engineers today sat down and tried to design a being that was conscious, intelligent, and had all of the potential to self-regulate itself and to heal itself, and do it without materials like silicon in chips,
Yeah.
to be able to do this through the soft technology of cell membranes and neurons. And I mean, it is such an advanced, a highly sophisticated, literally a soft technology.
Yeah.
And it's a very different way of thinking. I'll be the first to tell you, I wasn't taught to think this way,
Yeah.
but it's what the evidence is showing. I'm good till 10 till. So I know
Yes.
you're watching the clock. And
Yes. We're going to, yes.
I do, for our viewers, I have another interview coming up right after this, and
Thank goodness.
yeah, and I want to complete this conversation as well. But I'm the first to admit, Julie, it's a very different way of thinking. And the problem is, if you're a young person, and from the time you're in school, you're taught that you are weak, powerless, and flawed, and to rely on external technology not as a tool to help you, but as the crutch to get you through life. That's a very different way of thinking. And it has consequences.
Yeah.
And we're experiencing those consequences right now because we have a generation of young people that have become adults that now feel powerless victims and are scared to death of what is happening in the world, and are grabbing at straws for solutions.
Yeah.
And that's where we are right now. So it's also a time when there is a willingness, more of a willingness to look at new ideas and to embrace new discoveries, because a lot of the old ideas have failed us. They're not working. So it's a very exciting time.
Yeah.
And it means something different to everyone. And the language that we're using doesn't work for everybody. But I think what does work for everybody is we all know that something is up, and that kindness with ourselves as we go through this, and kindness to one another, are very powerful, powerful keys to getting through this together. And I think it's one of the things that comes up in conversations all the time. So that's where we are with this.
It's a beautiful note to end on. I was just thinking, I was going to ask, that's like the perfect space to just, hopefully you got so much, we're going to have show notes. I mean, I can't even tell you how many notes I have here, but that beautiful just reminder of kindness, just kindness to ourselves and to others. It's so powerful. Not always, it's not easy for everyone. I know that. And it's healing. It's healing and loving. Oh my gosh. Well, we're so grateful. I'm speaking on behalf of the entire community who is listening, and all of those that are just, we're blessed by you and your teachings. And, I consider you between a role model and mentor and teacher, and someone that I look to as a friend, and just so grateful for your time, for your wisdom, for saying what I think people have been wondering, and saying it in a way where we can come away empowered and really get the brilliant beings that we are. Just thank you, Gregg, so much.
Oh, Julie, you're so welcome. Thank you for trusting me with your community, because the truth is, you never know. You don't know what I'm going to say. And I recognize that. And so your trust means a lot to me. And I want to thank you for your courage. It would be a lot easier not to do a podcast than to do it. And your dedication, your perseverance, your willingness to talk honestly about conversations that we need to have but aren't always easy, and for being such a powerful hub of your community. You are the focus of your community, and I'm honored to be a part of that today. So, are we live right now? Are we broadcasting live?
We are not live,
Okay. So,
recorded.
okay. So, what I want to say to everyone when you watch this, whenever you watch this, thank you for sharing a part of your day with me today. And Julie, I look forward to our next. Thank you so very much.